I mean, not only a potential Big Ten tournament finals matchup, be even a national championship matchup.
I did say before the season.
Maryland
and the
Maryland's not making
sure
the
about
Final
that.
Four. What are you talking about?
Oh, what?
I did.
Are you insane?
This is Winning the Draw, a Northwestern lacrosse podcast. My name is Matt Campbell, and you're listening to WNUweRa Sports, your home for Northwestern athletics.
Noel Cumberland going from coast to coast and taking it herself, pushes the lead.
Today's a special day in the world of WNUweRa Sports, and especially in WNUweRa Sports pods, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the first day of the Matt Campbell tenure in WNUweRa Sports podcasts. So,
And Aidan Weiss.
no applause, guys. Like,
Because you didn't include Aidan Weiss. It's gonna read out the audio.
Okay, fair enough.
We can snap.
All right, and as you can see, obviously, we're not just limited to Spotify. We are now on YouTube, which is an exciting time. But enough of that. Enough of the preliminaries. Welcome to the first podcast of the Matt Campbell Aidan Weiss era. This isn't Aidan Weiss. This is Pierson Strandquist.
I'm basically Aidan Weiss.
Basically Aidan Weiss.
I'm Aidan Weiss. I'm interim Aidan Weiss.
He's Aidan Weiss Jr.
Yeah, sure. We know that.
I am Matt Campbell, joined by Pierson Strandquist for winning the draw today, and across from us, going from left to right, across from us, across bars. From left to right, Brendan Priesman, Gabe Shumway, and Ben Dannemiller. Guys, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being. You are officially my first guest as podcast director here at WNUweRa Sports. It means a lot. This group will forever be in my heart. Right?
Do you feel in his heart?
I can
do you
feel
feel
it.
loved?
I can
Do you
feel it.
feel love?
Sure.
Do we feel love, Brendan?
Mostly, yeah.
Nah, I don't think you feel love. All right, let's spread the love to this team. Okay, I guess the big question a couple of weeks ago about Northwestern lacrosse was: is this a legitimate national title contender? Which sounds crazy because in the world of lacrosse, Northwestern is and forever will be a national championship contender under Kelly Amante Hiller. But it didn't look like that was the case a couple of weeks ago. Lost back-to-back at home. Okay, well, we gave them the benefit of the doubt initially, losing to ranked Syracuse, 15th in the nation at the time. But then they lost to unranked Ohio State, which is a much better team than people perceived coming into the year. And of course, they did get ranked in the week after, number 25 in the nation, but lost their next two. But I digress. We really started to doubt if this team would host a regional or even sniff the Final Four in a year where the Final Four finally returns to college stadiums. And the first stadium that the NCAA committee chose was Northwestern, Lakeside Medicine Field. That in and of itself is crazy because we already know the East Coast bias with lacrosse and all of that is kind of rampant.
Field hockey can be.
Field hockey as well. Good shot.
Field hockey even worse.
Yeah. But
Not host.
Anyways, back-to-back losses had Northwestern dead to rights, ranked outside of the top 10 for the first time since 2018. But the way that this team responded was nuts. Immediately destroyed Oregon on the road, 17-3. No surprise there. Oregon, bottom of the Big Ten. And then, what I think right now is game of the year versus then number one North Carolina. Coming into the matchup, UNC was riding a 31-game win streak and hadn't lost at home since 2024 when, guess who? Northwestern, in NC Skane, walked in and tromped them at Dorrance Field. And guess what? Northwestern comes back and tromps them again in their return to Dorrance Field. And the game was a dogfight. What?
I was asking if Ilsa was there.
I don't know. Good question.
Saying Trump and
Trump, yeah.
Trump them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if she was.
She called game.
I mean,
there's a pretty
she
solid
did call
field
game.
hockey
She did
lacrosse
call game
crossover.
this past year in the field hockey tournament, so maybe.
You got some
But
Maddies.
anyways, Northwestern comes in, beats UNC in overtime, 17-16. Again, in what I think is game of the year. Snapped a 31-game UNC win streak. Jenica Poco clutched down the stretch, 12 saves, including 3 consecutive saves to end the game, including stopping a free position shot from Kylie Motice, which led to the Madison Taylor game winner on the other end. 5 different cats scored multiple goals in that contest. And then this past Sunday against Johns Hopkins, a call that I was on. It was fun. Thank you, Calvin, for joining me for that one. It was close, and then the second half started, and Northwestern ran away with this one. They outscored the Blue Jays 5-2 in the third, and the game was basically over by then. Noel Cumberland went coast to coast on an insane goal, took it 80 yards down the field, and scored. I think it was the highlight of the day, which sounds crazy because Maddie T had 6 goals on her own bobblehead day. Maddie Epke, finally had her coming out party, following up on a 15 draw controlled day against UNC with the 5-goal performance. Jenica Cuoco, back-to-back games with double-digit saves, 11 on the day. And, of course, Northwestern's back in the top 10 this week, ranked number 6 by the IWLCA this past Monday. Whoa, that was a lot. Claire never did a recap that long. Okay, so that brings us to this question. What do we think of this response from Northwestern? Is Northwestern the team that we've expected it to be with this shorn-up offensive group? Is this the team that we thought that it would be and, are finally reaching their potential? Or does Northwestern have more work to do?
I think it can be a bit of both. I think that what we're seeing these past couple of games is that the new players that were brought in from the transfer portal are starting to play to their talent ceilings that we expected them to when they came into Evanston. Maddie Epke, you talked about the coming out party of the 5 goals. I think the coming out party was the 15 draws against North Carolina. Mm-hmm. She's got 24 draw controls in her last 3 games, had 15 total in her first 8. And that's someone who led the nation in draw controls per game last year, or was pretty darn close to it. So her playing like her normal self in the circle is huge. And then Cuoco waking up playing like her usual, a couple double-digit save games in the past couple of games. And then Olivia Adamson, 12 points in her last 4 games. These are the 3 highest level transfers that Kelly and Montehill brought in. They were not playing at the All-American level, All-Conference level that they were used to playing at their prior schools. And I think in the end, they just needed a little bit of time to adjust. They maybe needed the wake-up call of that Ohio State loss, of those 3 losses in a pretty short time span. Like the Syracuse loss, the offense looked utterly broken. And then obviously the Ohio State loss, fairly inexcusable, even if Ohio State is a quality team. But what we're seeing now is that the transfers are finally starting to gel with the returners, and they're starting to play more up to their ceilings because of that.
I feel like that Ohio State loss took me back to the Colorado loss at the beginning of the season, which was super concerning to see. But like you said, I think that was the wake-up call that this team needed. And that offensive unit, of course, Taylor's there and Aditi Foster's coming back. But then when you bring in Maddie Epke and Olivia Adamson, and it just throws a bunch of dynamics into this unit that this team is going to need a month and a half to play together and really work through. Speaking of which, Adamson and Foster did have quiet days against Johns Hopkins, but Maddie Epke seems to have her feet underneath her now. Is this what we should expect from the big 4 of Maddie Taylor, Maddie Epke, Olivia Adamson, Aditi Foster, constantly putting up 15, 16 goals a game? Should that be Northwestern's benchmark?
I think the difference is just that, especially with goal scorers, there's such a level of inconsistency from game to game that Northwestern has had over the years. So you see Maddie Taylor being this constant presence, but it's kind of just been a fluctuation of you need Maddie Taylor and one other player in a given game. And sometimes it's Maddie Epke, like she had that coming out party. Olivia Adamson has had her games as well. I just feel like you need a second option in most of the games, and that's been kind of a big issue for Northwestern. Against Colorado, they really didn't have that second option that was able to consistently put goals on the board. And I feel like that's the issue. It's just you don't necessarily need everyone to be at their best, to be playing at that, Tewaaraton finalist level that, or Tewaaraton watch list level, that Maddie Epke has been at different points in her career. It's really just you need someone to step up as that second option, and that doesn't have to be the same person every game.
That's a really good point. I mean, I feel like, in that Syracuse game as well, one that, at least for most of the game, Madison Taylor was kind of almost not that first option. It almost felt like some of those secondary options were combining, like some turnovers from Adamson, some turnovers from Dee Foster. Those felt like the big 2. And then how unsuccessful the offense was there kind of shows like you still do need Madison Taylor to be that one. But if you can get any of those three, to your point, to be a consistent 2, or at least to be a 2 when the other is not being a 2, I think that kind of playing with that is going to be important for this team.
And I think they'll have the ceiling of being a 2.
They know. They have some of them.
Maddie Epke and Olivia Adamson have the pedigree, but like Aditi Foster got a hat trick in 7 minutes in one game this year. Like I think they can all. They can all be that.
To be fair, I think it was one of the weaker non-conference. Was that the Central Michigan game, Brendan? I want to say it was
the Aditi Foster hat trick.
Aditi Foster
probably.
I think so. I mean, we dropped 25.
Yeah, I was on the call for that and for the Cuse one.
Okay.
Either Central Michigan or Marquette.
I believe it was Central Michigan, and she ended up, and then Jenna Soto.
Marquette,
Also
I know
got
for a
one.
fact, was the Olivia Adamson show, and she went off for. She had 4 goals, and I think she had 1 taken away for some reason. But anyways, yeah, I do see how this situation with the revolving door at the number 2 spot is a problem for Northwestern, and
I don't necessarily think so.
or could be at least.
I honestly
Because-
think that it's better to have multiple number 2s than it is to have one number 2, because the thing that happened against Syracuse is the same thing that happened against UNC in the title game last year, and the same thing that UNC tried to do in the game where Northwestern came into their house and beat them, which was basically just, hey, you have Maddie Taylor. She's the best scorer in the nation. We are going to triple team her every time. We are going to tackle her every time she gets into the fan. Anybody else want to score? Good luck. But we'll take our chances against that. But now Northwestern has multiple players who can fill that void. Like, will it be Aditi Foster or Taylor LaPointe every time? No, but it might be Maddie Epke. It might be Olivia Adamson. But you do know that there's at least 4 players that are capable of it. I don't think Taylor LaPointe's strong run of recent play has been a fluke. She's been a consistent riser throughout the course of her career at Northwestern, been getting better and better each year. She's currently on pace to finish 3rd on the team in points, or in goals scored, with 36.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
But, you have that, and then you also have Olivia Adamson and Maddie Epke, who were all conference players at their previous stops, who have the ability to take over a game if need be. It's never a bad thing to have more scoring options than you think you need.
I would even put Lucy Monroe as a potential 2 on the right day. I don't think it happens often, but I think give her the right game like she had against I believe it was Army. And
She's got great chemistry
Yeah.
with Taylor, too, because
Yeah.
they were in the same class, so they've been playing together all 4
And
years.
then you had that really random Jenna Soto one against CMU, which
yeah,
I mean,
that's
that's
more
CMU.
That's more.
I did confirm Aditi Foster did it against CMU.
There you go.
Okay.
But even so, that just shows that even people who maybe we aren't even considering 2s, considering as 3s or 4s, can have those days as well. I guess kind of the big news of this weekend that's coming up, obviously we have Lacrosse Day in Chicago, Notre Dame and Northwestern being the 2 teams who are kind of hosting, I guess, although really it's just Northwestern hosting both the men's and a women's game. I guess just how big is this for this program against USC, to continue to build momentum, and also just, last year a very successful lacrosse night in Chicago. What is it different with the day, combining it with the men? Just what are your thoughts overall on that, both in terms of the team's momentum and just on the event in general?
Yeah, I think the camaraderie of the 2 sports is really cool to see this year. Especially, like, I want to briefly shout out Richmond being number 1 in the poll for the first time, and it's Notre Dame versus Richmond, right? I'm correct on that?
Yes. Yeah.
To see those 2 teams coming to town is amazing too. But I mean, it was such a raving success last year. Even just seeing people called it like the Caitlin Clark effect for a while, but this just renaissance of girls that are so excited to watch women's sports, and you see the crowds just filled. And I've seen so many pictures from that day that all the photographers were taking, and just the jubilation in the audience was so cool to see. I think it's one of the most successful events they consistently run, and if I'm available that night, I will absolutely try to be there.
I think it's cool that the Midwest has a lacrosse event like this, because any team on Long Island could easily put on an event like this where 2 top 5 teams on the men's side in the nation, possibly all time, would say yes in a heartbeat and go play in a 20, 30 person capacity stadium on Long Island and make a ton of bank. But because it's Northwestern and because of the circumstances of the new Ryan Field being built and the Temp Stadium, lacrosse in Chicago just took off, because I think a lot of the attention went to Northwestern Medicine Field after football taking it over. This is not about football, of course. This is lacrosse, but because there was such a big emphasis on pushing the lakefront. The fact that the lakefront is one of the best views, if not the best view in all of college athletics to watch, not just football, but any sport, and that includes lacrosse, I think is enticing to a Notre Dame, and it's enticing to a Richmond, and that's why they come up here to play. And, obviously, Northwestern, they're not taking on a Maryland, they're not taking on a Stanford, they're not taking on a Clemson, they're taking on USC. And I'll let you jump in, Ben, and I'll stop yapping. But at the end of the day, this is just good for the sport. This grows the sport in ways that, we have never really seen before, not just to the Midwest, but to the West Coast. And who knows, maybe this sparks something for a team like a USC to get exposure in front of a crowd of 15,000, 20,000.
And I think it's so important that it's happening at Martin Stadium that, for a stadium that hosts both men and women's sports, really, I guess, feels to me like a primarily women's sports venue now, with the Chicago Stars moving in there for this year at least. I think just it kind of is almost kind of like a beacon of women's sports for the Midwest, like on a college campus. And also, the women's game is like the nightcap. Like you have a top 10 men's game, but the women's game between a top 10 team and an unranked program is the one that's like featuring, that gets the esteemed spot. It's just so important.
I think part of it too is because it is Northwestern. Northwestern is always going to cap.
No, 100%.
But for the sport of women's lacrosse to get that primetime spot, it's important.
Yeah.
And it's just it's very exciting. Unfortunately, I won't be there because I have Big Ten Plus. But if I was, as an enjoyer of the sport of lacrosse, the women's lacrosse in general, I've gotten into the sport over the past couple of years, and I've kept up not only with like a UNC, but with like a Clemson and a Stanford now. It's just fun, man. One of those big, like, homey, classic Northwestern big sporting event type of vibes. But for a sport like women's lacrosse, it doesn't get enough attention, or at least the attention that I feel like it deserves. But moving past that, right? Lacrosse Day in Chicago, and then a matchup that we didn't expect to see, or at least a caliber of a matchup we didn't expect coming into the season. Number 1, Maryland, on the road. Holy smokes. When I tell you this team is on the burner, this team is on a burner. They haven't lost a game this season. They're 12-0. That's their best start in 6 years. They got upset by Penn in their own NCAA regional last year, in overtime no less, and they took it personally. These ranked wins, guys, are kind of nuts. Number 13, Syracuse to open the season, no less. Number 12, Virginia, the very next game. So 2 consecutive ranked wins to start the year. 14th ranked Princeton, 7th ranked Johns Hopkins, who Northwestern just beat and made them tumble down poles. And number 21, Penn State, most recently last summer. This team is led by Lauren LaPointe, team goals, assists, and points leader, and ranks third in the Big Ten with 63 points so far. And J.J. Suriano, the starting goalkeeper with a 9.29 goals against average. That's third in the Big Ten. And she also leads the saves with 123, which is 30 more than Jenica Cuoco in second. And that's good for 5th nationally. And when you look on the calendar, this is really Northwestern's last chance to boost their resume in the regular season. Of course, they have the Big Ten tournament, and they'll face some ranked opponents in the semifinals and finals. If things hold up and Northwestern stays on the same trajectory, they should get that number 2 seed. But does this game determine who gets to host a regional, and does the loser potentially have to travel if they don't have a good performance in the Big Ten tournament?
I think it depends on if Maryland wins, because I think the Michigan game a week from the game on the 9th, where they have to travel to Ann Arbor to take on a Michigan team that I think so far this year has either been the best or second best in the Big Ten, depending on how legitimate or not you think Northwestern's recent run has been. I think that will come into effect too. It's going to be sort of like what we're seeing in the NBA's Western Conference right now, where it's, the Nuggets, Timberwolves, and Rockets are all kind of right there with each other in 4, 5, 6. That's what I feel like with Maryland, Michigan, and Northwestern. My main concern with Maryland is I think that their schedule being so front-loaded actually helps both Northwestern and Michigan, because I think both are better than Maryland, but Maryland's record right now is comparable, so Northwestern and Michigan will receive a bigger resume boost. But if you look at the stats for Maryland, other than Suriano, they're not really a great team at anything in particular. They're 12th nationally in draw control percentage, which is fantastic. But both Northwestern and Michigan are higher on that list than the Terrapins are. I mean, Suriano's great, best in the nation in save percentage, 5th in saves, but she's also facing 19 shots a game. That's too much. Eventually, when you do play a team with an offense as versatile and as explosive as Northwestern's, your goalie's not going to be able to hold up. As good as Suriano is, no goalkeeper in the nation could hold up against that. We saw North Carolina have to make a goalie switch because of how devastating this offensive attack for Northwestern can be. So I do think that this game is going to matter in terms of, who's the 1 seed in the Big Ten, maybe who's ranked in the top 4 ahead of the Big Ten tournament. But I personally don't think Maryland is the caliber of team that would end up hosting either way.
So let me ask you this. Do you think the draw battle will be the biggest determinant in who wins this game, or no?
No. I think the biggest determinant is how close can Lauren LaPointe get to matching Madison Taylor's impact.
I say that to say this. I don't think Northwestern's a team that wastes offensive possessions. At least now. The way that they've been playing most recently against North Carolina, they did not in the second half. The first half, different story. I'll give you that. Second half, they didn't. Johns Hopkins, the whole game, Northwestern was nearly flawless on the offensive end. And then when Johns Hopkins started turning the ball over and stopped converting on free positions, the game was over. If Maryland plays this Northwestern team that is just so hot offensively and in the draw circle, I think that J.D. Suriano falls victim to 20 Northwestern shots. It won't be a 15-goal Northwestern performance, we know that. But I think if Northwestern puts up 12 and 13 and keeps mucking up offensive possessions for the opposition, like we did see against UNC and like we did see against Johns Hopkins, where we see Noelle Cumberland and Hannah Rudolph making it really tough on those attackers, as well as the defensive unit. Mackenzie Brown has been great, and so is Reese Hansen. If we see this type of Northwestern squad where defense turns to offense and it seems like one cohesive unit, Maryland is in trouble. And that all starts in a draw circle with Northwestern winning possessions and getting the ball on the offensive end.
I would argue against the draw circle being the most important thing in this game, though, because I feel like Northwestern just is such a dominant force in the circle, and yet a couple times this season they just haven't been able to convert that into wins. I mean, you look at the Colorado game, the Cats outdrawed Colorado, I want to say 17-4. Yeah, 17-4, and they lose that one mainly because they aren't taking care of the ball in a lot of games against opponents they really should be. And the Army game also wasn't great for turnovers despite the win. I think that it is just ball control, making sure that NU isn't just throwing wild passes and turning the ball over when they really are not forced to. And we've seen them turn this around in the UNC game, especially, even turnover margin there. And so I think, that if they can just keep that trend going of good ball control in recent games, then it should be lights out and you win. But if they can't, then that's when you get in trouble.
I will present this counter argument to what you said. I think the point that you made about Colorado is completely valid, 110%. But I'm a little bit apprehensive of fully being in agreement with you just because it was the second game of the season. The first game against Boston College, Northwestern was in the offensive floor. But like I said before, when you have a new unit, a new offensive unit, with two players in Adamson and Epke who are used to being the number one and now have to take a back seat role, it's not necessarily going to be smooth sailings to start the season. And we saw that with Colorado. Yeah, did Madison Taylor get hers? Yes. But Maddie Epke did not have her best game by any means of the season, especially with turning the ball over. This was a problem that, me and you talked about after the game. Army West Point was a game in which the team clicked and something snapped in the team. When the first draw went up, it seemed as though Adamson was on point. It seemed as though Taylor was on point. Foster was on point. Lucy Monroe played well. The offensive unit looked really cohesive for the first time at home, and it reminded us of that Boston College game. Now, were the defenses in those two games great? No. Boston College is not who they used to be last season, as you talk about, Brendan, all the time. And Army West Point is nowhere near a top 5 caliber team, top 10 caliber team like a Northwestern. But a team like Colorado, a defensive-oriented team, one of the best defenses in the country, I would argue top 15, top 10 defense in the country, can beat a Northwestern because they know how to attack a dynamic offensive unit, unlike an Army and unlike a Boston College right now. And the team just didn't know how to play with each other. And there's a lot of pressure playing at home as well. But now, once we get further into the season, I think you can trust that this team knows each other's tendencies. And that's why Epke had a breakout game against Johns Hopkins last game.
I think to that point, though, the key going forward, not just against USC and Maryland, but into postseason play, is continue knowing each other's tendencies. I think it was Ben who talked about like the struggles that this team has seen passing the ball around the fan at times where that's led to turnovers, or trying to fast break a little too aggressively has led to turnovers. And the thing is, Northwestern has gone under 10 assists in 6 games this year. They are 3-3 in those games. And 2 of the other games, Stony Brook and UNC, both narrow 1-goal victories. The BC game, as you said, obviously the first game with the new unit, that's going to have less assists. But the data is pretty clear that when this team can manage to compile double-digit assists, things go pretty well for them. Now, yes, obviously, if you score more than 10 goals, you got a good shot to win. But, against Army, only 10 of the 18 goals were assisted. Against Marquette, 13 of 25. 11 of 17 against Oregon. 11 of 16 against Hopkins. But it's pretty clear that, there's a difference between this offense when the passing is what's creating shots versus when it's just individual charges into the fan creating shots. And I think Northwestern needs to lean far more into the former than the latter as postseason play approaches.
100%. I think also just almost ignoring context. Yes, okay, they're on a hot run. They started off the season slower. You have to kind of ignore that in a game like this because Maryland is treating this probably the same way Northwestern was treating the North Carolina game because they know they have history with Northwestern, right? In the Big Ten championship last year, narrowly fell.
Should have won that game.
Should have won that game. And
Davey Foster, man.
And you still
Foster the GOAT.
You still have players like Corey Edmondson who are still there who remember that. And I think that that is Northwestern has to put this game in a vacuum, put pretty much every game the rest of the season in a vacuum and think about it. And I'm sure they are. But to kind of everyone's points, it's just it will be really important for this team to just focus on what they are good at and try to almost just lean into their good tendencies, and then worry about those bad tendencies in the film room and practice instead.
Yeah, to go off that quickly too, Pierson, I think a big point is that this Maryland team is not that different from last season, especially offensively. It's an incredibly similar unit. You still have those same kind of scorers that are still kind of leading scorers. And I think something that we've been kind of leaving out is Jenica Cuoco in this whole equation, in that she's kind of, the 2 early season Northwestern losses were largely because of the offensive struggles. But I think that Ohio State loss falls very largely on Jenica Cuoco. One of the lowest save percentages in her career. And, the save percentage didn't look amazing against UNC. That's the best offense in the country. I don't think anyone would really try to push back on that. And she had a couple really key late game saves. And I think that's a big part of her getting back on track. So especially with the Maryland offense that, is very, very beatable. I'm going to have my eye on Cuoco the whole game.
I think that's a good place for us to begin a wrap. And to wrap up these podcasts, I'm introducing a new segment. We call it Around the Horn. It's pretty simple. It's Around the Horn style answers. And the topic is score predictions for USC and the Maryland matchups. And I guess I'll kick this one off. I don't think the USC game will be competitive. I think it's another 15-point Northwestern performance. I'm going to say 18-5 for USC, which I think it was a similar score to what the game was last season between these two teams. So I'm going to say 18-7 Northwestern win over USC. And on the road, I think Maryland does eke out a win over the Cats. I'm going to say 13-11 Maryland win.
Okay, I guess I'll get started. Honestly, I originally was going to go that the USC game would be closer, but it's Lacrosse Day in Chicago. Northwestern's going to want to put on a show, and they will. I think they get 20 past the Trojans. I think this could be something that's like 20-7, 20-8, very realistically.
So Army 2.0. Army
More like a Boston College 2.0, but at home.
Or Boston College. Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the
Well, I guess
the
Army
Army
was the
game
worst
was
team.
at home.
True.
I guess. All right. Go ahead.
But and then for Maryland, definitely a little closer, but I do still think Northwestern has shown that they are, they're 3-0 in the new season, right? As Coach Hiller
Hashtag
called
brand
it.
new season.
Yep. And so I think they go to 5-0. I think this could be somewhere around. I'm expecting like a 12-10, 12-9 victory.
For
For the Maryland game. Yeah.
For the
For the Cats.
Yeah,
Again,
that's what I
sorry. It was unclear.
Yeah, I agree with Ben wholeheartedly on the lacrosse night in Chicago note. You just know when you have that fan. Like, I think of like my high school senior game sort of thing where everybody is
Oh my
just
God,
so
yeah.
locked in and clicked when you have that sort of home crowd.
Especially
Maybe not Northwestern senior day case, but I think something like lacrosse night in Chicago, like I could even see it being like 21-4 Northwestern. I think they could put on an absolute show. Maryland, I'm really torn on because I think Northwestern's ceiling is so much higher than Maryland's, but I think Maryland's floor is so much higher than Northwestern's. I think it ends up being a really low-scoring game. I'll say Maryland takes it at home, but I'll go 10-9.
Yeah, I mean, I know it wasn't the Lacrosse Day in Chicago game, but it was the Lacrosse Day in Chicago opponent when Northwestern played Michigan last year in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And Maddie Taylor had an NCAA tournament record at 10 goals. This is her final lacrosse night in Chicago. I trust that she will put on a show. I trust that the rest of the seniors and all those who have transferred in who understand what the night means to this program will follow. I don't think we're going to get quite into the 20s range because I do think Kelly Monty-Hiller understands that as much as you do want to focus on taking it one game at a time, USC is not going to make or break this team's season. So I'm going to say it's going to be around 18-7. And I think we see a lot of the backups, a lot of the freshmen get time. But I just can't get my head around the fact that Maryland's not really in the top 20 nationally in any stat save draw control percentage, which is one of Northwestern's strongest. To me, what you're relying on there is either J.J. Soriano playing one of the best goalkeeper games we've seen this season, which is possible, or Lauren LaPointe just flat out outperforming Madison Taylor, and not by like, oh, Madison Taylor had 4 goals, LaPointe had 5. Like, Lauren LaPointe has 8 goals, Madison Taylor has 4. I think Maryland needs both of those to happen to be sure of a win, and I personally don't think either of them happen. I'm going to say I liked Ben's score prediction a great deal. I'm going to modify it slightly because I do think on Maryland's smaller field, because they play on their field hockey field as well, there's going to be a little bit more of a fast pace. So I'm going to say something like 13-11 Northwestern.
All right, I guess it's my job to finish it off. I think for the USC game, I'm going to kind of agree with the panel we have here going. Although I guess I'll give the most conservative score prediction for Northwestern. I'm going to go with 15-6 here. And I kind of similar to Brendan's point, I just think in the second half, it's probably going to be a lot of time for these younger units. And I'm not saying they can't score. It's perfectly possible that they put up a CMU or a Marquette-esque performance. But I just want to, I feel like at the end of the day, a win is a win, and that's what they're going to be looking for in front of a home crowd. And against Maryland, I think I'm going to copy Gabe's prediction here, but then just flip it the other way. So I'm going to go 10-9 for the Cats. I think they're going to heartbreak Maryland yet again, late yet again, and hopefully set up a potential matchup in the championship yet again. If a similar scenario, I don't know if that will happen, but I'm going to go 10-9 in the Cats' favor. And I guess I'll shut up and let Matt close us off.
Yeah, I mean, not only a potential Big Ten tournament finals matchup, be even a national championship matchup.
I did say before the season.
Maryland
and the
Maryland's not making
Sure
the Final
about
Four.
that.
What are you talking
What?
about?
Oh, what?
I did.
Are we
you
serious?
insane?
They are 5th in goal scoring in the Big Ten.
They're at best the 3rd best team in the conference. There's no way Maryland makes the Final Four.
No, yeah.
I think Maryland is the final.
They are
I
5th in
They
goal
have
scoring in a
great
9-team
goalkeeper,
conference.
a solid attacker, and that's
Brandon,
it.
you know my thoughts on goalkeepers in lacrosse. I think
Then why is
goalkeepers.
BC bad? Then why is BC bad?
Why is Maryland number 1 in the country?
Because they played a soft schedule. Wow.
I will say
They
I will
score
say-
less than Penn State.
I
Like,
will
what are we
say-
doing?
Syracuse is also not a Final
They score less
Four.
than
I will
Ohio
say.
State, bro.
I agree with that one more. So
Before the season, I'm not talking about the Final Four, about Maryland's chances of anything. I will say before the season, I was part of the panel that said was picking what I thought the best game of the season would be for the Cats. And I did say this game
This
against
is the
Maryland.
Inside NU panel.
This was the Inside NU panel. I was the only person who said that. So I'm hoping that comes true, and I hope we get a Gabe and me-esque prediction of like a low-scoring, very tense matchup, which I
I don't
think
know if
it
you
will
could
be.
top the UNC game though at this point.
Well, I think the only way you can top it is if it's even more last minute than that one was.
I suppose.
But we'll see. Either way, Northwestern has a chance to, again, the new season could be 5-0. It could be very impressive, and it's been a great time. So it was really good to have you three on. Thank you to Brendan. Thank you to Gabe. Thank you to Ben. Dan for coming on this show, and I guess that's a wrap on the first pod of the new season.
That is a wrap. We're pretty torn on Final Four matchups here. Clearly, torn on
crazy
the Northwestern Maryland matchup. Okay, guys.
Even like you live that one down, bro.
Hey, all I'm saying is that Maryland is above powerhouses like UNC, Michigan, Northwestern, of course, Florida, Yale, Johns Hopkins, Stanford, Clemson, who just got the number one recruit in the entire nation, Alexis Spinella, excuse me. Maryland sits above them all, so you never know.
For now.
And we already know the world of sports is unpredictable. We just saw what UConn did to Duke not too long ago. So you never know what could happen in the world of women's lacrosse, right? But anyways, that'll wrap us up here for the first episode of the Campbell Strandquist Aidan Weiss tenure of the pods here at WNUweRa Sports. Thank you. Thank you three.
For Aidan Weiss.
I'll take that.
Thank you three for joining us here on Winning the Draw. Holy smokes, I almost just said rounding the bases as we were filming that right after this. But yeah, thank you three for coming on. Thank you for tuning in at home. And we'll see you next week. And as always, go Cats.
This has been Winning the Draw, brought to you by your host, Matt Campbell. If you've been watching on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button to be notified of all of our future episodes and our other content, like the Sunday Sports Blog. If you've been listening on Spotify, tap the follow button at the top of our page to add this show to your library. It's been a pleasure being with you today. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, go Cats. See you next time.